years, and now they have joined the gnomes on the colony in the ceiling. It all sounds absurd, and you're bound not to reveal it to anyone else because you're privileged to know these secrets.
Oh, of course.
But the thing is,
I haven't been
just
able to
because you
attend
can't
some of
see
these.
it, you know, it doesn't mean it doesn't happen.
So where is it? Whereabouts is it?
Right up there, right over there.
Where the light is.
With in between the light and the flowers on the ceiling, stretching all the way actually.
Can you see him?
As in,
Yeah.
no,
So you can see 'em right
no,
now.
but you were saying you've got to focus on that world.
But like, yeah,
Not
you
at
have
the same
it's
time.
Almost like if you have
a picture that you got to look
It's like
at.
opaque. Is it opaque? Is
Yeah,
it?
you got to switch screens. You know, it's like if you
I
have
know.
a visor.
Is it like this 3D? Yeah, it's like
And
3D
or
images.
those pictures that you can see two different pictures.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
So you either see the guy's
That's exactly
chin,
how it
you look at
works.
his chin,
Yeah,
That's
or
exactly how it works.
so you go see one or the other. You can't see both together.
Right.
So you can just switch instantly. You can go, yeah, I can see the chin,
Right.
the woman with the chin, or the bird with the coat,
Yeah.
a woman with the coat.
Right.
I've
exactly.
missed a little bit because I've heard little bits before, and I've heard it, but I haven't had a chance to chat to you before. I'm in
Right.
Blue Flap. So
Right.
can you give me maybe a very quick, in say 5 minutes, update?
Rundown, update.
Rundown.
I'll be
Yeah.
happy to
Well,
give this to you.
unbeknownst to me, and I guess most people here, there are, let's say, supernatural creatures afoot in Australia, right? And they've been spotted here and there. And the thing is that UFOs are, by and large, there's different kinds of UFOs. Some are the government black projects, etc. But the types of UFOs, the weird kinds, the genuine contacts, the little gray beings, they are actually dwarves. Dwarves in the J.R.R. Tolkien sense of the word. And they...
With beards?
Yeah, they do have beards, and they're pretty much stereotypically dwarves as Tolkien described them. However, they've been impersonating alien greys because people don't want to see dwarves today. They want to see the alien greys, so that's...
So they're keeping up with the time.
They're keeping up. They've adapted because
They
they
got a PR
can't.
consultant.
Because they, at one time, before humans came on the scene, the dwarves had everything, including Australia, apparently. And they have leftovers here and there, pockets. Apparently, there are only about 4,000 dwarves currently that have survived
In the world.
in the world. And dwarves.
4,000.
There are no dwarf women. Dwarves do not breed, so there's been no reproduction. There were
So
a certain number of
how are they
dwarves.
created?
There are a certain number of
Out of
dwarves
stone.
created out of, well, stone, not stone, but kind of
That
like
was always the myth.
yeah, that was the myth. Inorganic matter by the space gods, whoever they may be.
Oh, it's the same space gods we were
Right.
talking about.
Yeah, indeed, the ones who created everything 26,000 years ago.
No, I haven't heard that either. So.
Well, there's a whole mythology here.
Oh,
Bruce,
that's
that you've been-
interesting shit.
You haven't been letting on.
Even a quick sentence.
You're talking
or
about
something.
hours of a dialogue
Yeah,
to
it
give it
took
all,
us
right?
about
It
three.
took us a lot of
So
hours.
suffice to say that, just think about the possibility. I'm not trying to sell you anything. Just think of the possibility that
Always open to ideas.
that the mythology of the Eric von Däniken space gods, mysterious beings creating humanity, that could be true, and that it could have been happening 26,000 years ago, and that it led to things like Atlantis, etc. But it also led to the creation of the mythological beings that we read about in fairy tales,
Like centaurs and stuff like that.
Every
And the watches
culture
in
in
the
the
Bible.
world, right? Every culture in the world talks about them for different reasons. But so, you know, the thing is though, when a human being like me encounters these beings, I'm bringing to it my own prejudices, my own plot level, my own perception. So it takes on a form that's going to please me, and so I can't claim that the mythology I'm told is exactly the truth. But there's other questions as well.
That's very good.
There's other questions as well, though, that are brought into when you talk about the reality of these things. Because what if it is really a Matrix scenario,
Yep.
and the world is self-created anyway? And so by tapping into this other dimension, I'm actually expanding my realm of control without even knowing it, and I'm interacting with myself objectively through the form of these creatures. Who knows, right? So, like, there's all kinds of possibilities. But anyway, so the quick summary is that the dwarves are hanging around Australia, and they have their own little colony place. It's like a ship that's mobile, but it rests most of the time nearby here, actually just 1 block away, across the Highbury Road. There's a housing development that they started and then had to stop for unknown reasons. And it's been left vacant, and they're doing nothing with it. Why? Because it's actually where the dwarves have their little ship parked. All right, and I first encountered them in the park, Highbury Park, and they came visiting. They came calling on me. Why? Because I was playing with my cosmic plates, and I was starting to manipulate the strings of reality magically, and that's a whole long story. My cosmic plates, what they're about, how I use them, etc. But let's say that through my own magical activity, I caught their attention, and they started interacting with me. Then the dwarves, who I kind of I bartered with the dwarves. Let's say I made deals with them. They give me certain things, I give them certain things, and that's still continuing. But the interesting thing is that one of the dwarves, I call him Keebler because he resembles the Keebler cookie guy. He has a very thin beard, and he's not really like the big bearded stereotypical dwarf. He's kind of younger. He's different. He's more hip. I guess.
He's down.
He's got the goatee beard.
He's got like a goatee beard. He's more. You can see him in a nightclub. Maybe you have. You don't know. And he introduced me to the gnomes, and what that means is that the gnomes, little men about this big with the hats, yellow gray skin, not quite the stereotypical gnome, similar. But then again, that could be my prejudice, my perceptual
How can you see
prejudice.
something that's not giving off the same radiation yet?
Well, the thing is,
Perception.
they let you see them, and then you make a unconscious translation of what they're sending you.
It's like in the Matrix where your digital image is what you want it to be.
Oh, great! You're recording all this, aren't you?
Yes.
That's great. So what happens is that with the gnomes, I draw their attention, and the thing is that whether or not you realize it, you have gnomes attached to you, and that the good luck or bad luck, the things in your life that are put in your path, books left for you in a bookstore for you to find, they are placed there by the gnomes. And what the gnomes are is they are part of the planetary intelligence. They're four-dimensional creatures made of what's called teratological molecules.
When there's the
That's a
things
fancy
that
word for teratological.
You guys think they were scared of light.
Yeah, and that light, electricity, our normal reality, counteracts their reality because it's sharing the same time and space as us, but at a different frequency.
But didn't you say they were bad?
They're not bad. Now, there's dwarves and gnomes that have gone bad.
Right.
Right, for various reasons. As with the elves. The elves are a whole different story, though. The dwarves and the gnomes were created by the space gods. The elves and the fairies predate human civilization and the space gods altogether. At one time, the elves were the first successful experiment. Let's say that all the different forms of life, the humans, the elves, and the evil reptilians of the dinosaur age, these are three examples of the planet experimenting with brain cells, right? Different civilizations or races have a job to serve the planet's interest. And the dinosaurs who developed failed to serve the interest, so they were bitch slapped into extinction.
So why are we still here?
Right? Because we are about to decide whether or not we will be bitch slapped.
Continue or not? Exactly.
That's what the apocalypse is all about.
That's a turning. We're on a.
2012.
Right. But the elves, anyway, they evolved into perfect creatures of light, but they never quite succeeded in doing what the planet needed them to do. However, they didn't quite fail either because they were perfect beings of light, so they were kind of hanging around on the side. And then
kind of in limbo.
when the space gods create the human civilization, the elves then come back in as like the guardians, advisors. Pretty much, Tolkien's mythology is pretty much accurate.
So you reckon he was inspired?
He was inspired, informed. He found, the guy was in charge of the secret libraries of Oxford University. He had the key that nobody else had.
Yeah.
So he knew facts that nobody else knew.
That
So he knew
it wasn't
things,
all in his head imagination.
and he worked out the Lord of the Rings stuff as a way of cloaking it all up and serving it up to the people without revealing too much. That's my opinion.
Silmarillion's
But
brilliant.
it's,
Right.
its
Silmarillion
foundation
more
is
important than the Lord of the
fact.
Rings.
Yeah.
What is it?
Lord of the
Silmarillion.
Rings is a side story.
What's
Right.
the Silmarillion?
Silmarillion is
Start.
the real story. It's actually the beginning
How Middle Earth
creation.
began.
Ah.
And
all
I
the spirits, all the I can't recall the name of it now.
But the Eldar spirits, those are the
Eldar.
space gods, right? They are the gods who create the world in Tolkien's myth, right? And the first beings they create, for the humans to interact with are actually the dwarves. But the dwarves are put to sleep because the elves want to take charge of the planet first. So then that's the animosity between the dwarves and the elves, is that the dwarves are actually created first, but the elves had already existed and were hanging around and wanted to take possession and influence the humans first. So they kind of preempted the dwarves and created kind of a...
Are there evil elves?
Right.
They weren't meant to be made.
Right.
Basically. It was like a...
Are there evil elves though?
Scenario.
There are evil elves. There are elves that have gone bad, and that's who Sauron is in the actual mythology.
Right.
He's one of the elves that's gone bad, right? The chief
Well, that's
Eldar.
orcs.
Right?
They developed the orcs. From
Well, the orcs are perversions of elves that
twisted and
twisted perversions of elves.
But Sauron wasn't an elf. I thought he was more.
He was.
He was the captain of the guard of Morgoth,
Yeah,
Morgoth,
Morgoth,
right.
who was a fallen Eldar.
Right, and Sauron was one of the excuse me, who was one of the prince elves who was kind of deified by Morgoth into what was called a Maiar, one of the Maiar spirits. The wizards are the good version of that.
Right.
And anyway, so getting back to my story for the moment,
Yeah.
just to sum it up
Continue,
quickly. Continue, please. The fairies, anyway, weren't originally on the scene. It was just the dwarves and I doing experiments. The dwarves did some insane things. I can't even tell. I wouldn't even tell you.
Come on.
I wouldn't even tell you.
Come
some of
on.
the-
Tell us
it's-
something,
it-
come on. Because I love different things.
Well, different things. You know, the most outrageous thing was I met up to a certain point 5 of the dwarves, and then I was introduced to a 6th dwarf who was dead. I actually had to astral project into the afterlife world where most of the dwarves, who are mostly dead, exist. And he wanted access to my plates, this dwarf, right? But he didn't have a body. So at 1:30 a.m. on a particular night, Mr. Gray, I call him Mr. Gray because he's one of the dwarves who does the UFO impersonation, and he's in charge more or less of their experiments. He's kind of like a technician guy, and he was like the fun, hearty host guy. So Mr. Gray orders me to go and buy a certain weight in kilogram of roast, raw meat, right? And also an equivalent weight in batteries, AA batteries, okay? Because although the dwarves all the dwarves and the gnomes can't deal with electricity and lighting, especially for fluorescent light, because it counteracts the teratological molecule. They do make use of the energy in batteries because it's direct current instead of alternating current. So what he was doing essentially is he wanted to create a temporary body for this dwarf who's dead to use long enough for them to manipulate the plates in their own. See, I gave them access to my plates. It was part of the deal, right?
Even though they're designed for you?
Even though they're designed for me, they have a particular power in my what's called genius loci. Because I've been using them in the flat for my own purposes. They can be used here. It's almost like your computer, right? You have the password on. People, if someone comes and sits down, they can use your computer.
I can give them the password.
Right, you can let them use it, right. And so my plates have the power to warp, let's say, the carpet that the reality is made out of. If you look at the reality that's happening four-dimensionally as a carpet,
Yep.
it's unrolling, right? You're moving across the carpet. The plates, because of the four-dimensional power and how I can manipulate them using my perception, willpower, and, bag of tricks. It's complicated. I have the ability to warp the carpet and shape events so that certain things occur. One thing I can do very effectively is warp reality such that synchronicity deliveries increase in frequency. And books that I want to find, movies I want, shows I wish to be on, there's a frequency response rate that is astonishing.
Really?
Yeah, astonishing.
Like the fact that I brought this camera over here today and filming it for your
Well,
purposes.
Is there anything you can show us?
Well, it's a question of controlled perception field, all right? In a cult scenario, where everybody is locked into the perception field, it's like everybody's tuned into being able to see the gnomes, let's say, for example. All kinds of things are possible. However, let's say innocent bystanders who are not tuned in, they interfere. It's almost like the fluorescent light being on. They interfere with the frequency. So I can effectively do it for me. I could give you the technique to do it for you and replicate it for
How
yourself
can you do that?
on your own. I can, actually, you know what? I'll make you a promise right now.
Yeah.
I can't whip it out right now, but
Yeah.
I'll write you out very clearly
Yeah.
instructions on how to manipulate the synchronicity field to your own advantage.
Well, can you do that?
I'll do it. I'll have
Promise?
it for you in 1 week.
Good.
1 week. That's
Don't
guaranteed.
forget.
I will not forget.
But
1 week from tonight.
will I be able to do this? or
You'll
not?
be if you
I
put
believe
the
it.
effort into it.
Yeah.
You'll be able to do it, guaranteed.
So
Okay.
basically what you're saying is,
Too, actually.
Yeah.
you're basically
I'll use
saying lucky shit will happen to me.
luck.
You
There's
can
no such
manipulate-
thing as luck.
Yeah, but
You make your
in
own
a
luck,
layman's
I always
terms.
say. Yeah. No, you
Speaking
make
of
your
luck, the
It's all about creating your own, what you think you create.
controlling your perception.
Yeah.
The third miniature person. Let's see. First is the dwarves, but the dwarves are almost on our level, right?
Oh, yeah.
Okay. The dwarves are like more or less on our level. The gnomes and the fairies are almost like at a micro parallel. They're like, it's a scale thing, like in the movies.
Yeah.
Oh, Honey, I Shrunk the Kids. That kind
Yeah,
of
they're
thing.
not, they're not short and stumpy. They're literally scaled down.
They're scaled down, right? They're human size. They're just scaled down, and they're at the same scale as my figures on my plates.
So that would be a 2 meter height.
Essentially,
Have a
right?
little look, I might check.
Yeah, you can check them out. And so, basically, the house is built to be the level of the gnomes to walk comfortably, even with their hat on. Right?
The gnomes.
The gnomes.
So the gnomes are
And
in there, are they?
What I have is go come over here and get a better look at it.
Raxus, that's
Yeah, that's my magic square.
which you had in your book.
Right. See, the magic square is that is my magical formula that allows me to control the 7 frequencies that the carpet of reality is made out of. Okay? And all magical practices are about manipulating these 7 forces in one form or another. I don't care who you are or what you're doing, where you're from. You're doing that in one form or another. And the advantage I have is through the Freemasonry being able to synthesize all approaches using my own unique language so that, again, I'm not somebody else's bitch. I don't want to use somebody else's alphabet.
Because then you give them control.
Right, exactly. So if you're using the Kabbalah or you're using the Tarot, no matter how good you are, no matter what you're doing, you're still at some level going to be somebody's bitch.
Yeah.
Right? And fuck that. So I got my own system.
Like a programming, programming language.
Right, exactly. And so my own system, my own game, because that's it. If you're playing somebody else's game, there's one thing you can't do, and that's change the rules of the game.
Yeah.
Exactly, but you're making your own game.
So I don't care about the rules. I care about the rules of rule making. Right? And that's what the plates are all about. That's
like
what I call the carpet of
dreams, isn't
reality.
it?
Right,
When
yeah.
you're in your dream, you can call the shots, but most
Right.
people don't realise that.
And so the imaginal world of the symbolism and the power of the cosmic here is that I can step above the reality of the matrix simulation, which is happening inside the cube, right? You can look at the floor, the simulation here of reality. The doors, which are open at this point, normally they're closed and you're trapped inside there and you're staring at this wall. This wall is the present, okay? This green wall is the past. The orange wall is the future, okay? The eternity is right here, the purple. And so normally you're trapped and all you can do is look out here. You can't see, okay? And all you can do is sense the past to the future, right? And the eternity is always behind you. You're not able to get out of the cube, okay? So by using the symbolic formulae of the Freemasonry, I've enabled myself to, through the symbolism, push my consciousness completely out of the 3-dimensional simulation and in my own perception, go up a level to the God level, which is in the pyramid here, right? Because you can look at the cosmic puppeteer being here and the strings coming down, and here I have Mickey Mouse representing my mundane self as the wizard, right? Holding the secret Freemasonry symbolism. And so you can look at yourself as trapped in the cube, and the puppeteering strings are what determine your reality, right? Events you're going to encounter. So why not get out of that up into here and control the strings, right? That's the point, right? So all the events that are going to occur, which are just simulations that you're seeing on the walls of the cube, you're actually inside just sitting down all the time. But because you never get out of the chair, you never assume that there's anything else, and so you assume that what you're seeing in the simulation is the reality, but that's not the case. And this is actually a structure existing in a plane, the 4-dimensional plane, and that's where the dead are, that's where alien beings are, that's where the dwarves come and go from, right? And so, by using the symbolism, I train myself to perceive what's outside the box. That's how I can see them. So, but anyway, they're partying in the world of the plates, and now I have my lifeline here, okay? Try to get like a scope, if you get out on the light right there. Go back and forth on the lifeline. This is just a symbolic series of symbolic things that explain different parts of my life and different points where things happen. Like here, I joined Freemasonry, for example. Right?
What's 2001 then with the all-seeing eye on the pyramid?
That's when I began to study the Illuminati and the conspiracies that control the world. This is when I began to have the goddess worship with Isis. This is when I discovered the magic square.
What's this?
That's when I would say my awakening occurs. R represents Ross, my mentor, who was the guy who kind of shocked me out of the childhood fantasies into considering the cosmic. Here's me doing my first astral projection, right? And so that's the starting of the cycle, leading up to the completion of the cycle here, representing by Sebek, who is the Egyptian lord of the secret underworld, whose statue you see there.
Isn't that like Anubis?
Is it Anubis?
No, Anubis is here. He represents the beginning of the adventure. Sebek at the end is in the Egyptian mythology.
That's your wife's maiden name.
It is indeed, and that's
And mine.
how convenient, right? How
Wow.
convenient.
What was it? What's
It's
it?
my
really?
wife's maiden name,
What?
Sebek. It's her
Sebek?
family name. And Sebek is also the name of the crocodile god and who he is. In the normal Egyptian afterlife, you die, you go before the scales,
Yep.
right? And they weigh your heart against a feather representing the law, the divine law. And if the feather is heavier, you admit it into heaven,
Yeah.
the paradise with Osiris and Isis. If your heart is heavier, then you failed and you're consumed. But if the scales balance, something that's not talked about often, Sebek appears, and he conducts you to the secret underworld that you are the god within. You see? And the Egyptian formula contains within it that extra level. You know, most religious formulas have heaven or hell.
Yeah, not
Very few have the make your own reality.
reality.
That's what
Maybe
Sebek,
that's what we all are now.
Lord of the Secret Underworld, is all about. So for me, the symbology,
I've always
you
said
know,
that.
the symbology,
Continue with
Egyptian-wise.
Wait.
Even you got R with a question mark, which I
I
assume
knew this.
meets to Ross, and it points down to what
Oh.
looks like Freemasonry symbols.
Well, no,
again.
R with a question mark here is when Ross died, supposedly, we thought.
Yeah.
But in fact, it was revealed later he'd actually jumped out of his body and become a vampire down here. Right, that's him as the vampire.
Ah, yeah.
But the question mark is, what was he really doing? So it's RLV.
And is
R
that
for
still-
Ross, L for Lestat, the vampire Lestat, which was his model, V for the vampire, and this represents kind of the fangs. But it's also
okay.
because in the old cosmic symbolism, although it had nothing to do with Freemasonry, Ross was using this as his personal symbol, the Freemasonry symbol, even though he was not a Freemason and he had nothing to do with it. Synchronistically,
Subconsciously.
he was using that symbol, right? He got it where? From Peter the Great, who also gave us the double-headed bird symbol, because it turns out that Peter the Great, who isn't represented here, except he's represented by the double-headed bird for me, the Tsar, Peter the Great, he's actually one of the key
Isn't it the
figures in
flag of
past.
Germany?
It was used by the Holy Roman Empire, which included several German royal families who continue
Right.
to use it. But actually, it started in ancient Egypt, later used by the Russian czars. And the Tsar Peter the Great has been a lifelong obsession of mine. He's my model, per se. And I actually, through my cosmic cult, which is here, Nuog was my cosmic cult, which I ran, we resurrected
cool.
Peter the Great. And he was revealed as having puppeteered many aspects of the entire scenario, including my mentor. So it's a whole vast tapestry that's so complex. But
You haven't
this
been
re-
to St. Petersburg yet?
I haven't, but I will. Of course, my wife's already been there, right?
I've been there too. Beautiful. Absolutely beautiful.
When I go
city.
there, it'll be Titanic. But this is, other stuff. I can't even begin to explain all of it, of course. But every part of this represents part of the journey for different reasons.
What's this
What happened here is that
with it,
this
with it
line,
going down and
okay,
coming up?
what's happening here, this line represents a timeline, okay? At this point, in 1985, I actually opened up two timelines. One was my original. The second was another one, which was created for very complex and terrible reasons I can't explain. But
I think you might
it
have
was-
in the
yeah,
past, though.
yeah, and so I had these two timelines for a period. Then myself in this alternate timeline was killed. Okay, so that's why this ends in this little skull. Okay, I continued my original one throughout the years of my cosmic cult. During the cosmic cult, a mysterious figure from the future who had the ability to control timelines reopened this alternate timeline, which is why it continues here from that point. So this X and this X are the same point, four-dimensionally, like stitching time, right? And so both of them continued. Then the climax of it was what was called the Amber War, which was when all the cosmic forces that we generated during Nuog clashed in a apocalyptic showdown. Everything was destroyed, and the original reality itself was destroyed. We survived by moving permanently into the second reality. And then that too came under threat by the resurgence of the cosmic figures, and so we had to push ourselves into a third reality, which is why that third push happened on June 6th of 91.
Push
That's why.
ourselves? Is
We-
it the other members?
Well, we
through,
always-
through our first set of cosmic plates, through the use of and later destruction of the third set of cosmic plates, we managed to avoid the fallout from the evil forces.
So
that
have we always been in that third timeline? As in us?
As in,
Is this the timeline you're in now?
this is the timeline I'm in now. So
Yeah.
yes, you have always been in this timeline way back here. So you in 1984, you were back here. Now.
So we were in a different reality
What
to
we're
you.
doing here, though.
Who knows? That's an alternate version of you. Could have been anybody.
So you've been in an alternate reality.
Actually, I've been through.
Two.
Now that's only there's one, two, then the third one, and now what happens here is that I through various complex events, okay, I obtained the ability through the use of combining memory and imagination to open up doors into the past, okay? So, opened up a door to myself at the end of 1990 during the Cosmic Cult days, okay? Now, of course, in my original timeline, that never happened, so now I have access to a fourth timeline, okay?
Alternate.
Open up, in other words, instead of having a memory, like, you know, like in post-traumatic stress, you're trapped in the memory, right? This is a technique of using the imagination and will to take over a memory. And almost like Linda Blair is possessed by the demon in The Exorcist, I possessed my younger self and took over my own past, right? Sounds absurd, but it's absolutely true. And so I had access to that reality, which was running continuously with my 1994 reality where this was happening from. Thus, this door opens back to this past. Then, because I was so happy with my success, I did it again. And I opened up another past. So now I had, originally I opened up the door to 1990. Then 3 or 4 months go by, so that reality clicks along, right? Then I open up a second one. So now it's 1991, and I have 2 alternate realities that I'm controlling from 1994. Okay? And then I cut a deal with the ghost of my mentor, Ross, who of course was still hanging around. In exchange for him accessing this reality, I get to trade off and access him as a vampire in the past.
I would remember that.
And so, bang, back here to the past, and this is me mad as a vampire, just burning, total burnout in the reality because I was just abusing power. But that's a long story. It's gruesome.
That's
it's
when you were
terrible.
eating eyeballs in the
Yeah, it's
fridge.
terrible. It's terrible. We don't even want to talk about it. And
In his apartment, in Ross's apartment.
indeed,
Yeah.
indeed. But the end result is that I gain
This should
contact
be a
with.
movie.
It's going to be my apocalyptic thriller. My
Good.
character is based on myself, of course. And what the result of having 4 realities going, the 3 past plus the original source reality of 1994. As a result of that, I gain contact with the higher self, which is the faceless man here, you see. And that leads to access to the UFO, which is the other reality, outside of everything that had existed from that point on. This is me as the 4-dimensional creature, the 4-dimensional point. If you look at that back down at the house, what's at the top of the pyramid? The all-seeing eye, that represents your consciousness or your 5-dimensional foothold, right? You're a 4-dimensional creature, your 4-dimensional architectural structure, to be more precise. You, as a 4-dimensional, all of your life happening at once.
Yep.
It's all happening in the structure. So that's you 4-dimensionally, and the top peak is the 5th dimension, which would be the all-seeing eye, the God, but you're part of that. You have a slice of that light as well. You have your own all-seeing eye. So this was my first contact with. That's why I have it as the faceless man, right? And through my see this here. Then after all this event, leading up to the contact with the faceless man, I abandoned the cosmic for a while, and I indulged in the martial arts world and the secret S&M world as a way.
The upside down pentagram is normally in common culture these days. Witchcraft or Satanism.
Satanism. It was Satanism, but it was in the red world of martial arts because my martial arts instructor was martial arts guy and cop by day, secret S&M overlord by night. Okay?
Overlord.
No, but
And
S&M is
so-
one thing, but what
yeah.
about Satanism?
Satanism is S&M because Satanism, in the real sense, is gratification of the self through animal passion with a disregard for spirituality. That's what S&M is. Intensifying perception and sensation, pain, pleasure spectrum.
So
At the
it's linking that
expense,
to some
yeah,
extent.
and through the ego, power of the ego, which obviously feeds directly into both the persona of a martial arts hard stylist, Taekwondo, and the cop in charge, type guy. So that was my
It's funny because martial arts is
period.
normally the opposite, that you remove the ego.
Indeed, like I actually compensated
It's a
later by
contrast.
taking like a keto, which is the contrast where you dissolve the ego. But this time, for what I needed to do, I needed to, from this point, after all this, I needed to be totally mundane for a period and get away from it all. And so that was an ideal hiding place, was that world. Plus, I learned the self-defense, martial arts madness. And then, when I was ready, the lightning strikes, and I re-emerge with my cosmic formula. And I was tested by the Egyptian gods, and I passed. And that's when I began the contact with Isis, Cleopatra, etc. And that's when I began to understand the homuncular house, is what it's called.
Homunculus.
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 What's that
Homun-
from?
The
Okay.
homunculus is
Yeah.
The game where
It's
you make
the
your
little-
own fate. then there's that creature that was created.
Oh, the
But
homunculus. Yes.
I have a homunculus, which I created so that I can enter the world of the gnomes myself at their level. It's a miniature,
Version of you.
four-dimensional clay version of me that's actually in the house,
God,
interfacing with the world
that's
of the gnomes.
heavy. That's heavy.
It is.
What's with your time?
What is
It
it?
is.
Gravity?
And
So
the thing
gravity
is that
thing?
other alchemists throughout
Hey, that's
history-
right. It's alchemy.
Other alchemists have made
His
their
father
own
was a
homunculus.
alchemist.
And I've actually met two of them, Paracelsus and Carl Jung. Both
Yours.
of whom made their own.
Paracelsus there.
Both of them. Paracelsus lived in the 1500s. Jung lived at the beginning of the 20th century. Both of them made their own homunculus, and they entered the world of the gnomes. Paracelsus is credited with coining the term gnomes in the popular sense, because he was the first to make contact with them in the modern sense. You know?
Okay.
Okay, we're gonna run out in about
All right,
18 minutes.
All right,
It
let's
is,
let's keep going here.
Keep going. Okay, so this represents my understanding of the four-dimensional geometry of things, leading to the Abraxas magic square, which is delivered to me in a dream by cosmic figures. MM represents the year 2000, also the spirit of Mary Magdalene, who I was in contact with for various reasons. The May 5th, 2000 alignment occurs. That's part of a whole scheme involving the Freemasonic calendar of light. Of course, I didn't know that at the time. But what happens then is that after the May 5th occurrence, I become sucked into this whole plot level of investigating the Freemasons and the conspiracies that rule the world and the Illuminati. And it's almost like all my personal cosmic crosses a line and ends here, and then I'm in a collective cosmic.
Yeah.
Okay? Beginning with my understanding of the hyperspace geometry, I begin to understand a bigger picture, which is what the goddess represents. And so the goddess represents the good side of the positive, the negative would be the evil conspirators, right? The men versus the masculine and the feminine. But what I realize is it's about a balance of the two and a new apocalyptic plot level, which involves the king and queen of Jordan and a whole nother dialogue that can't happen at this point. Okay, so this here, the star, this represents the intervention of fate with my marriage and my wife coming to Australia. And the G represents the success of myself in the Freemasonry world. Because Freemasonry's G, which is usually in the center of the square and compass.
But that's 2003 though. We're in 2005 now.
Right, 2002 at the end is when I met my wife and I came down here. 2003 is when I established myself in the Freemasonry world down here and achieved the apotheosis. So now from 2004 on, I'm at a whole nother plane, which is why I need to look objectively at the entire series of events. Because now the 20-year period is played out and I can see through the power of what I've learned. I can see things in totality. And
That's
what the
another
house
thing actually,
represents.
because when you're sort of explaining all that,
Yeah.
obviously when you're here,
Yeah.
you don't have the knowledge that you have
Right.
here.
Right.
So
Right.
obviously somewhere along the line you're going to go down the wrong path, go, nah, come back.
Right, different, right, exactly,
And,
different things. That's why there's a lot of chaos in the early period.
Yeah.
Steve,
Burning.
do you want to turn
And this
your
is your
laptop
age.